Hello. Big news this week. New startup from the founder of Ask Nicely. I'm ready to give you some more information about that. But first, some quick tech news. You win, Mr. and or Ms. Procrastinator Pants. You didn't get your South by Southwest pitch application completed. And yet still, the folks at Southwest, the deadline was supposed to be today, but they've extended it till Monday. So if you've been on the fence, thinking about applying to South by Southwest Pitch, thinking it might be nice to be on stage in front of thousands of people at a huge annual gathering of tech-type folks, you still have the opportunity to do that. Just get your South by Southwest Pitch application in, okay? Please. They really, really want you to apply. That's why they've extended it. They want you to apply. So consider it. Wired released a guide to what to do if you're businessing in Portland. If you're here and you're like, haha, business, and you're looking for things to do, Wired released a guide for that, which is nice. It's always nice to see people highlighting all the interesting restaurants and things to do here in Portland. Big news, Elon Musk now is getting paid $1 trillion was one thing, but which I still haven't processed. But the important thing from potentially from an Oregon perspective is Tesla is considering outsourcing their chip production, and that may go to Intel. Now, it probably won't go to Intel here. Probably go to Intel in Arizona or one of the other fabs that they're building, but it may come here. And anything positive for Intel corporate-wide will be positive for us here, given that we are currently the largest collection of Intel employees in the world. So that was interesting to hear that Tesla was thinking about outsourcing those chips. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that, and I hope it means good things for Tesla. I hope it means good things for Intel. It certainly meant good things for the Intel stock, which kind of rocketed up based on that news. Now the big news. Ask Nicely has a kind of interesting story here in Portland, so I'm a fan. It was started in New Zealand, and then they started an office here in Portland prior to the pandemic, like maybe 2017, 2018, if I'm remembering correctly. And they were coming here because they really recognized that Portland had kind of this history of customer service and a culture that really lent itself to the business of customer service. And so that was part of the motivation for coming here. And then what was really, really great about Ask Nicely is they decided to move their headquarters here. So at a time when so many other companies were placing their headquarters in the Bay Area or maybe in Seattle, Ask Nicely chose Portland because of the culture and the talent here. So huge fan of Ask Nicely. Well, their founder has now left to start another startup, and it's called Huckleberry. Huckleberry is focused on 360 focal reviews. So if you've been employed by a company of any, kind of significant size, it's highly likely you have experienced a 360 focal review, which is where you have people from all over kind of report in on your performance. And they give both pros and cons, and you get from higher ups, you get from people who may work at a position that is lower than yours. You get from the side. That's why it's called 360. It's from all over the place. And it really enables you to get a better picture of what your performance is, if done correctly. The problem is they're not often done correctly, and sometimes they're more difficult to do than they should be. Like your peer is like, I'm super busy, I don't have a lot of time to think about delivering critical or productive or constructive feedback to you. I have to do my job. So they rush through doing your review or whatever it is. Anyway, Huckleberry The new startup is designed to do this using AI and voice. So making it easier for people to provide that feedback instead of having to type through forms and all those kind of things, they can just chat with the AI to provide that feedback for employees. So hopefully streamlining that, simplifying that, all those good things. I'm a huge fan of this concept, if only because the very first company I started with a co-founder, the very first startup that I actually started was a 360 review tool. And a lot of the things that Huckleberry is talking about were a lot of the things we were trying to fix back then. Like, how do you make it easier? How do you let the employee have the ability to capture and retain that information rather than having it sitting in a, an HR filing cabinet somewhere? And how do you streamline the process so that really you can get this feedback and criticism whenever you need it instead of just once a year? So I'm really happy to see Huckleberry continuing on that tradition of 360 focal reviews. And strangely enough, our startup was named after a fruit as well. I won't tell you directly, but if somebody happens to guess it in the comments, I will verify if that was the name of the fruit. Take a look at Huckleberry if you're in HR, if you're in charge of 360 reviews, or if you're a person who values 360 reviews and wants them to be more efficient and effective for your organization. I highly encourage you to take a look at Huckleberry. Back in ye olden startup days, way back when we used to ship stuff on CDs and floppy disks and that kind of thing, and even in the early days of the internet, launch parties were kind of a big deal. Like, it seemed like everybody would have a launch party for a major release of their software. And while that has kind of, decreased over time, I'm always a huge fan of when people hold launch parties. And so I got the opportunity to attend a launch party this week for DevSwarm. DevSwarm's an Oregon-built company. They're looking to do Hive coding. So instead of vibe coding, they're talking about Hive coding. And what they mean by Hive is a kind of an acronym for high velocity engineering. So the tooling that they've built for engineers is very similar to an IDE environment. But what they do is enable you to bolt in a bunch of different tooling like GitHub or Jira or things along those lines, in addition to a bunch of different models. So you may want to bring in Claude Code, or you may want to bring in ChatGPT, or you may want to bring in Gemini. They kind of give you a single interface for doing all of that work as a developer. And if you're a developer that has experimented with AI or incorporated AI into your work, one of the things you've learned about doing that work is it can be time consuming because it's a conversation. So what will happen is you will say, hey, model, do this work, and you'll prompt it. It'll start doing the work, but if you're only using the one model on the one thing, you kind of sit there and watch it and wait for it to get done thinking and then doing some things and then thinking some more and maybe writing some stuff. It takes a while for it to output what you need it to output. And for the most part, you're kind of sitting there waiting. So they were thinking that could be time better spent if you could run multiple processes, multiple models simultaneously, so you can kind of kick them all off, tag along with them to see what they're doing and when they're completing, make more efficient use of your time and prevent you from sitting there waiting. So giving you more velocity, making you a high velocity engineer. I think there's several things that are interesting about this. One, it's the early days of AI. I know you hear about it a ton, but I think what DevSwarm is doing is approaching this as a way of rethinking how engineers and developers will build code in the era of AI. And we're still exploring that. We're still exploring how that should be done, or what the heuristics are, or how developers are most effective in collaborating with AI and models in developing code, how they can be thought partners or pair programming partners, and what is the interface that enables that developer to do that more effectively and efficiently. So that's what DevSwarm is thinking through. And then from a broader community perspective, this is why I'm super interested in it. If you've ever talked to me about the Portland startup community, you will often hear me say, Portland is really good at engineers building tools for other engineers. So we're not often the platform or the protocol. We're not often the end user facing part of the product. Like we are somewhere in between in that space between product and end user. So maybe things like analytics or cybersecurity or reporting or server configuration like Puppet, or maybe it's product development like Jama or Knapsack or those kind of things, or things that make engineers better at doing what they want to do and building what they want to build. And I think that's a really sweet spot for Portland, where we've been successful in that regard year over year. I mean, if you tilt your head to the side and squint just right, that's what Intel does. They're not the computer, and they're not the end user. They're the thing that goes in the computer that enables the computer to be better. Or you look at Tektronix from way, way back. They didn't build like TVs. They built oscilloscopes to help the engineers who were building the TVs make better TVs and better radios and those kind of things. So anyway, I think Portland has a long and storied history of engineers building tools for other engineers. I think we excel at it. I think the challenge with AI was it was too compacted at the beginning. So the models were going right to the end user. Like the ChatGPT moment kind of condensed all that into one thing. And now what we're starting to see with more models entering the picture, with more tooling entering the picture, with more ways of engaging with AI, some of that space is starting to open up. And I think Portland companies will excel in that middle ground between product and platform, or developing said product. We can also be on the other side. There's space on the other side, but especially some of that in-betweening, taking those models, making them more effective, munging around and helping create products that make engineers better at delivering the services that go to the end user. So I'm curious if this is just a one-off. I mean, we just saw Knapsack, but I don't think it is. I think it's finally that space opening up where it gives Portland's talent a place to play. And so I will be keeping an eye on that. It's not quite a trend yet. It's approaching a trend. So I will keep an eye on DevSwarm and keep an eye on more Portland companies that are finding ways to interact in that space. So not a startup, but was a startup not that long ago, Expensify. I want to remind people that Expensify, one of the most popular apps for managing, expenses and things within corporate environments and now travel and other things. Expensify is a Portland company. Portland startup, Portland public company now. The CEO and founder is here. They took out a big bank on Fifth Avenue and made it into their office. The Midtown Beer Garden, the cart pod, the Midtown Beer Garden that got all zhuzhed up, got a glow up. That's Expensify behind that as well. So I always like to keep an eye on Expensify because they do nice things for our community like that. So I wanted to let you know that Expensify has signed a deal with an NBA team to help, deal with their expenses and travel and all those kind of things. It's not the Blazers. I would really like to tell you it was the Blazers. It's the Brooklyn Nets. So it's still awesome. Brooklyn Nets, great partnership. Great to see that happening. Maybe a few other NBA teams will think about doing it. Or maybe a WNBA team or 2 or 12 will consider doing as well. I don't know. I'm just saying Brooklyn Nets sounds like a win for Expensify. Always happy to see them doing well. And again, they're another kind of one of those stewards of community that if they're doing well, they try and pay that back to the community. So I wanted to let you know that Expensify is now powering all the expenses for the Brooklyn Nets. You might just watch me here. You might not listen on your podcast platform. You might not even read my blog. But if you happen to, the blog I've been doing for 18 plus years, typing nonsense into the internet, if you happen to go out there, you will notice that every day I try and do a links roundup of stuff I'm reading, stuff I've seen, stuff that might be valuable to you as a startup founder. I just collect a bunch of links and then I put one post a day that's a huge roundup of those links. I call it the Silicon Florist links arrangement. And I try and do that every weekday so that you have other stuff to read that's not just Portland startup-y stuff, but it's stuff that may be beneficial to you in your work as a startup founder or as part of a startup or in a startup community. Anyway, there was one post this week that I caught that I just loved so much that I wanted to kind of highlight to you. It was from Chris Newman, and I will link it up below. But the title of it's amazing. It's the myth of the magical money fairies. There's this prevailing mythology in the startup world about how startups are built, how startups grow, and like the only way to grow startups through venture capital. Like that's, it's all part of this all mixed up and misinformed mythology about startups. So I always love when people kind of poke a hole in that. And Chris Newman definitely does that with this magical money fairies piece. Really talks about how we have this misconception of VC and how it works and how companies are funded and why they're funded and all those kind of things, but it's very approachable. So if you're a new startup founder and you don't quite think you understand VC, or if you're considering starting a company and you're like, all I have to do is start building this thing and then millions of dollars will rain from the sky, please read this post from Chris Newman about the mythical money fairies and get a better understanding of the reality of how things work in the startup world and VC rather than the mythology. I know it's hard to believe, but we're already in November. It's getting towards the end of the year. What does that mean? Yes, it means you're already thinking toward next year and what's going to happen next year, and maybe that company you're going to build, or maybe stuff you want to do in the community, or events you want to attend, or people you want to meet. Whatever it is, I'm sure as you start thinking toward 2026, a lot of questions pop to mind. Maybe there are questions about startups. Maybe there are questions about Portland. Maybe there are questions about venture capital. Maybe there are questions about community. Whatever the case, I am holding an Ask Me Anything session on November 20th. It'll be live streamed. You can attend and ask your questions there. You can send me questions ahead of time if you would like to, and so I can kind of plan for them, or you can do both. You can send me questions ahead of time and show up, and we can go back and forth on your questions and thoughts and ideas. And I don't know, I might not have answers to everything, but hopefully I have decent answers to most stuff. And if I don't have answers to it, then you know what I'll do? I'll take your question, I'll take it away as homework, and then I'll come back here once I figure it out and record something in response to your question. So I guess one way or the other, your questions will get answered, even if they don't get answered during the live stream. So again, November 20th, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to sit here for as long as it takes. I've planned for an hour, but like if people are there and not really asking anything, then maybe it's done in 10 minutes. Maybe it goes, I've done them before, they've gone on for like 2 hours. So I don't know. All I ask is that please show up, even if you don't have any questions, because you may be the person who has the perfect response to somebody else's question. So this is really just a community thing. I'm just like, hey, let's all get in the room. Let's throw those questions out there and let's get somebody to answer those questions, even if it's not me. And I'm going to simulcast it on LinkedIn, and I'm going to try and pay attention to questions on YouTube and questions on LinkedIn so that everybody can get their questions answered. I sincerely hope you'll join me, because it'll also help me plan for 2026. If like we start hearing themes, or start hearing the same question said different ways from multiple people, or start recognizing gaps in the community, I think we can all really benefit from this. And even if you're not in Portland, please come hang out with some of the Portland people. It's always nice for us to have connections outside of Portland, and perhaps we can answer your startup questions regardless of where you may be. Because as I always like to say, there's the Bay Area and then there's everywhere else when it comes to startups. And so things that are going on in Portland may be beneficial to you in your community. You might not be able to adopt something that's happening in the Bay Area and make it effective, or you might not be able to take advice or feedback that's particular to the Bay Area and apply it to your startup. But somewhere like Portland might have a more like aligned view with what you're going through. Founders in Portland may feel more like founders in your community, where it's an incomplete ecosystem. So don't think you have to be in Portland to attend this. Come on, come all. Welcome your attendance. And of course, because we're streaming it on the YouTubes, we will go ahead and record it as well, so it will be available afterwards. But I highly encourage you to show up live. Come hang out with us. Let's talk about startups. Let's plan for 2026, and let's figure out how to move your startup forward or get you started on that startup idea next year. Okay, that's a wrap. We are done. We're at the part where now I just share secrets with you about stuff that happened. And this was I think last week I said I don't know where the week went. This week I don't even really know where the week went. The highlight of my week this week, apart from the DevSwarm launch party, which was great. I love seeing folks celebrating launches. I love to see folks celebrating the small wins. Really important that they do that. Speaking of celebrating the small wins, don't forget that I did the little stickers. I don't even know where this is on the camera, but did the stickers for Silicon Florist. Just to celebrate 18 years, celebrate 1,000 subs on my YouTube channel. So if you would like one of those stickers, I'll be happy to send it to you. You just need to go over to Patreon and provide your address there. Well, sign up for the Patreon and provide your address. I think you can just I don't know if the free people can provide their address, but the $1 people can provide their address. So just give me your address and I will ship you a sticker. I'll be happy to do that, and maybe continue to ship you other things from time to time, but you only have to sign up this once, and then I'll have your address and we'll be pen pals, as it were. Well, anyway, before I went off on that tangent, highlight of this week, I had the opportunity to be a guest on the Overcommitted podcast. Really good conversation, really enjoyed it. Hopefully it said some things that were helpful to you or might provide you some insight in the startup world, might spawn questions for that live stream AMA I'm going to be doing on November 20th. But I will, of course, link it up. I would encourage you to watch that and to subscribe to the Overcommitted podcast. They have great guests. I don't know why they had me. They have a ton of great guests on there. I was really humbled to be one of them, but I pretty much set the low bar. All the guests are better than me. DevSwarm launch party, I've already kind of talked about that. Ran into John Maroney. Remember John Maroney, formerly of Oregon Venture Fund, ran into him at the DevSwarm launch party. Kind of curious about what he's doing next, so I'll try and catch up with him and maybe share that with you. Speaking of catching up and talking with people, the startup stories, interviews with founders from Oregon and Southwest Washington. I've started that project. I've got a few in the can. I'll start dropping them next week, but I'm taking all comers. So if you are a startup founder in Oregon or Southwest Washington, or you're thinking about starting something and you've gotten it to a point where you're comfortable talking about it, I encourage you to sign up as a potential guest for that show. I would love to sit down and record stuff with you. It's an open book test, super easy. I give you all the questions. There are no gotchas. This is just designed to share more about what you're doing with the broader community and hopefully help you by allowing you to kind of socialize your idea and share it with more people. So be looking for the first episodes of that to start dropping next week. If I get some time this weekend to do some editing, I will get those chopped up and posted, and we can start that whole thing going. As I said, if you're watching on YouTube, they'll post here. Nothing you need to do, just subscribe here and you'll get those posts as well. You get those videos, but it is a separate podcast. So I didn't want to disrupt the weekly news recap that lives as a podcast. So the Startup Stories with Silicon Florist is a separate podcast if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform. Yeah, and I'm excited about it. Like, the first few conversations have been great. Some people are really good at like those like quick interviews, quick pitches on their companies. It's really impressive. And I'm really happy that I've been able to capture some of those conversations. I look forward to capturing more. So I hope you and I get the chance to chat about what you're building. I can't wait. Please sign up and we'll get something on the calendar and we'll make that happen. Okay? Hang in there. I hope you have a good weekend. And until we get the chance to chat again, please keep up the good work.